Hello and welcome to the Secret to Automation Done Right. We are so happy to be here today. Thank you guys all for joining us. All right, so let me turn on my video here and say hi. Hi, everybody. All right, so before we get started, we're going to take you through a little bit of housekeeping. I'll move my camera out of the way. Feel free to ask questions anytime through Zoom. We will handle all Q&A questions at the end. Last 15 minutes or so, and if we don't get to your question, we will absolutely follow up via email. This webinar will be recorded, so you will get a copy of it afterwards, and if you have anybody who wasn't able to make it, they'll also receive a recording as well. So that is it for housekeeping. So first, a quick intro for myself. I'm Katie Rubak. I'm a product marketing manager here at Sense, Chicago native, and I'm so excited to talk to you guys about automation and staffing. This is going to be a great conversation today with two fantastic ladies, but before we introduce them, just a quick agenda. So we're going to introduce you to the wonderful women of healthcare support. We will cover automation and staffing, why it works, some of the basics. The 5 secrets to automation done right, and really how healthcare support has brought their program to new levels with automation. And then the real ROI through automation, how you can measure, success, what that really looks like, how you can move the needle in your business. And then, like I mentioned, we'll end with Q&A the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. All right, so without further ado, meet Heather and Lian. Here they are. There's Heather, and then we'll have Lian. There they are. Hi, guys.
Hey. Hello.
All right, so if you guys could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about healthcare support and your business, and a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. So my name is Heather Roberts. So first, a little bit about healthcare support. So we've been around since 2002. We are a national allied healthcare recruiting firm. We have just about 200 employees, 100 recruiters. We work nationally. We do non-clinical and clinical roles. Some of our largest clients are Fortune 100 health plans, health systems, and TPAs. We are based right out of Orlando, Florida. Myself, I guess I should introduce myself as well. So I'm born and raised in Florida. I've been with healthcare support for 9 years, working from everything from recruiting to operations and technology. And I've got 7 years specifically working with recruiting, technology, and innovation.
Perfect.
I'm Lian. I'm also based out of Orlando, and I have about 5 years of staffing, recruiting, and client relationship experience, and 2 to 3 of those years have been focused on candidate engagement.
Perfect. Awesome. And then can you guys give us just a little bit of an overview of the goals of your team and how you guys are kind of set up, what you guys have, what you're trying to accomplish as your team at healthcare support?
Well, specifically around the candidate engagement piece, we're trying to obviously optimize candidate engagement with all of our contractors, as well as our leads and prospects. But most specifically, we engage the tool for attrition issues and trying to get as many of our contractors to both start in our positions and stay on assignment.
Awesome. And we will get into some of that a little bit later too. But I want to tell everybody about healthcare support success just before we get into this, just so everybody who's listening knows how amazing, what things they've been able to accomplish. So healthcare support, using automation, using Sense, the last 90 days alone has delivered over 16,000 emails and text message touch points, personalized automated emails and text messages. Of those, over 7,500 individual people have been reached through that Sense automation. And with that, and these are the 2 things I think they are absolutely amazing stats, a 42, almost 43% response rate on emails and automated email and text messages, and an almost 20% click-through rate. So when there's a link or anything in those messages, people are clicking through, and again, almost 43% of people are responding to those messages, which is amazing. And I'm so excited to get us talking about how you guys have been able to accomplish these things. These are, way above industry benchmarks, you know, for what folks are even able to get when they're sending manual emails. You're able to do this at scale. These numbers are incredible, and I just want to take a moment to tip my hat to you two and your team, because these results are absolutely exceptional for your business. So enough of me fanning over. I could do that for a whole hour, which I'm sure you guys would be totally okay with.
Totally.
But sure. Let's jump right into this. First, let's start at the basics. Let's really start 2 steps back before the house. What automation means to staffing. So we're going to talk back to kind of what this staffing at a glance, you know. So first, you think about the recruiting function within a staffing firm. Not even 50% of those functions are actually, you know, a recruiting specific function. And then within that, you know, recruiting function itself, 33% of that on average, of course, is data entry. It's not really a value add. You know, another 33% of that is prospecting, spending a lot of manual time looking for new talent. And then the really value add stuff, that human, personal, you know, element that really builds relationships and gets candidates through that great talent, you know, funnel. Only a third of their time is left for that human stuff. And I know, and so Lian, I want to ask you, you know, where was healthcare support, and how did you guys kind of feel this before, you know, beginning down the path of an automation tool?
Yeah, so we definitely, you know, recognize, and speaking to our team and our training team and our recruiters, that definitely most of their day was actually spent on all of those clerical tasks and all those admin functions. And, you know, we definitely wanted them to be more focused on recruiting, on building relationships with their candidates. So we wanted to see how we could remove that busy work per se.
Exactly, and I'm sure that that's for tons of people who are sitting here listening and watching and tuning in. You feel this too. You know that there's so much time that your recruiters could be using on really valuable, you know, actions and not spending on manual data entry or lots of repetitive tasks. And I think that's something that is felt across the entire industry. So aside from this, you know, you have your recruiter productivity. On top of that, candidate and contractor engagement in general is just broken for the staffing firm. You know, I think staffing gets sometimes a bad rep, and I think, you know, you look at these numbers here, and these are just industry averages. You know, your attrition before joining is up to 20%. Your attrition during an assignment is up to 15%, and then for most folks, the redeployment rate is only 5 to 20%. And all of these are just leaving money on the table by not minimizing these as much as possible. And on top of that, you know, if you've got poor communication, you're not engaging with your contractors or your candidates at scale, you're leaving yourself open to a poor reputation. You know, here's just a couple quotes from actual folks. You know, there's no status updates, or, you know, you reach out to someone, you don't hear back, and that's just it's not a great experience, and none of us want that for our talent. None of us want to experience that on our own. And so I think that's something that, on top of the productivity and giving recruiters your time back, we're thinking about our talent here. And Heather, you touched on this a little bit before, but, you know, what would the issue that healthcare support was facing to kind of get you to open the door to look at automation was attrition. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so attrition was kind of the biggest driving factor. Making the recruiters efficient is obviously very important, and was definitely a part of the tool, but the attrition that we had been experiencing was definitely the driver for it, and what we needed to solve most importantly. And that is the main driver for the workflows that we started with and what we went after. And really what we found is by gaining the candidates' feedback and the kind of stopgaps we put within the workflows, it was really able to show us a roadmap of what we were able to fix for our candidates. We started to being able to prioritize based just merely on their consistent feedback from our contractors and the candidates, you know, that they were giving to us, what we needed to fix and where we needed to fix it. So really the feedback became really actionable. And we didn't 100% know, you know, where that was going to go when we started. We just knew that we had everything we had tried previously wasn't getting us the results that we needed. We had heard about Sense and how they could help with attrition. That's what led us down this path. and it gave us a whole lot more than we had expected.
Yeah, and I wanted to shout this out here in terms of, more success that you guys have been able to see is that, candidates who, you guys have really upped your engagement, not just because of the, to solve attrition, but the engagement throughout the entire kind of candidate experience. And, candidates who are engaged with are 4 times more likely to return when they've been engaged. And that's just showing, you're trying to fix one issue, but realizing that this automated engagement throughout everything can solve so much more than just what you were beginning to want to solve. And I think that's really, really important for everybody here is you start with one thing and you realize, oh my gosh, the opportunities are really, really endless. But on top of this, and I'll keep us moving, I promise also everybody here that we will be ending on time. So I'm going to keep us moving right along. On top of recruiter productivity, the fact that the engagement communication with contractors and candidates is really, really critical to make sure that those, attrition, redeployment, and fall off, stays manageable, is that candidates, contractors, and clients all expect a customized experience. Think about in your everyday life. In my everyday life, everything meets me on my phone or wherever I am. I expect real-time information, real-time updates. Think about the last time that you ordered a package, and if you didn't get an update the minute it changed hands from somebody to someone else, you were like, what's going on? Candidates, contractors, and clients all expect this exact same experience throughout the entire talent lifecycle. When they move from one stage to another, they want to be asked for their feedback, and they want relevant, personalized communication wherever they are. That means on their phone, that means on their email, on their, getting a call, everything. So this is really, really important for, all 3 of these together really can be solved with automation and staffing. And so I think that's something, just to get everybody on the same page, there's 2 kind of classes of automation when we think about it, is to solve all of these problems, the recruiter time and productivity, the candidate and contractor engagement and communication, and the actual personalized experience. Automation solves all of that, but we have 2 classes of that, and this is just kind of I feel like I'm teaching a class. There is maintenance and data cleaning. It's like your foundation. It's table stakes. It's table stakes for us in our platform. Basic automation that is, taking away that manual data entry. It's refreshing your field, asking for status updates, and it leads to productivity and time savings. And then you have this next layer of event-triggered personalized communication, and that's this kind of strategic level of automation that allows you to have bi-directional conversations, escalated responses. It increases engagement, retention, and it helps you grow your business because you're using automation to add value to the talent lifecycle and actually leading to real tangible ROI. We're going to get into exactly how this plays out, but this is really when you're thinking about automation in your business, thinking about it in 2 ways. Are we just trying to automate to make sure our data is clean? And that's super valuable, but you can go so much further by automating so much more and automating touch points, coming from your recruiter across your, after, an interview's been scheduled, a first day check-in, and we'll get into some. I'm getting excited and I'm talking about stuff we're going to talk about later. But that's kind of an introduction into how we kind of think about the 2 classes of automation. And then I also, when we talk about this, why does automation work? There is a lot of, I know folks are, everybody knows automation is something they should be thinking about, but it's a little scary to actually take that step forward. Heather and Leanne, this is best, I think, coming from you 2, is why does this work? Why does it work for healthcare support? Why does this work for folks in staffing?
So for me, it's really reliable and it's very consistent. So, the workflows that we've set up, they get very consistent communication, and obviously it's reliable. We know exactly when it's going to go out, and it's going to go out to everybody in the same fashion, but it is highly personalized as well. So, they know everything's coming from the recruiter. That's all they know. But what I like the best out of it is, with new recruiters coming on, we always have new recruiters. So you always have some more senior recruiters, and you have some new recruiters. Senior recruiters tend to be a little bit better sometimes at certain messaging. New recruiters maybe not so much, or vice versa. So I like that this gives a really baseline for messaging and recruiting in general. So we don't have to worry about, well, this candidate got a different type of process, or missed out on some messaging, or isn't getting messaged enough, or contacted in general, right? They slip through the cracks, as you would maybe call it. So it kind of evens it out a little more. We can make sure that we can kind of fill in and create some stop gaps in the recruiting process and make sure some really important contacts get created during the recruiting process with the automation without losing any of that human interaction. Because a lot of times, you know, these candidates they respond a lot. As you mentioned, our response rates are really high. They respond very frequently. So they have no idea that the recruiter did not send this information, and that makes the recruiter respond to them as well. So the recruiter didn't initiate, but now the recruiter is responding to them. So now they're having a conversation that maybe the recruiter did not remember or would have not remembered to initiate. So it really creates a nice even level of recruiting throughout, you know, all of our recruiters.
Yeah. Leanne, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, just like Heather was saying, but it does keep that consistency, and it keeps, you know, the candidate engaged consistently as well. And throughout the process, it's also putting us in the forefront of their mind. HSS is there for us. They know that we have that relationship with them. So we're keeping them engaged, but we're growing the relationship.
Right. And I think that's this last bullet point on this slide is like foster and nurturing relationships with your existing candidates and talents to reduce your future costs. You're increasing the likelihood that they'll do business with you again because you've built this really fantastic relationship. And that's something I think some folks don't measure. They don't realize if you're reducing your future costs by investing in the talent you've got now, and automation helps you do that in a personalized, really scalable way. And I think this is a great place to really get into the meat of this, which is what are 5 secrets to automation done right? And I think, so Leanne and Heather are going to share a lot of what they've done in their business. And I think there's, you know, as we get into this, there's a lot of right ways and a lot of wrong ways to do this. And I think the way you guys have approached this is a really good framework for folks to think about in getting started, or if you're doing automation today already, just to really reevaluate and say, am I doing all of these things? Have I thought about it this way? Every business is different, but this is a fantastic place to kind of check in. Definitely some of the best practices from these two coming right up. So first, I think before you even really get into, okay, how are we going to automate? What touch points, what workflows are we going to do? It's getting set up for success, and setting that strategy is so key. These are just some questions to ask yourself, ask the team that you're working with before you get started, you know, where you want to impact the talent lifecycle, what KPIs determine success. And Leanne and Heather, can you talk to us about how you guys got started and what your process was for really getting set up for success?
Definitely. So first and foremost, we started with those that were going to be most affected by the tool, and that was our recruiting staff. So we got a group of recruiters together, and we explained to them what we had envisioned, and we kind of went through the process with them first and foremost, talked to them about what they'd like to see, how they'd like to see it. Now, I'm not saying we took every single thing that they wanted and put it into our workflow, but they got a lot of what they wanted. You know, they were definitely who was going to get the most out of it, but they were the ones that were going to have to interact with the tool day in and day out. We knew we were going to be asking candidates for some very specific feedback, which can be very scary for recruiters as well. And so we knew that in order to get their buy-in and make it work, they were going to have to want the tool. They're going to have to work with the tool, and we were going to have to give them time back in their day. That's what they wanted more than anything, right, is to take off some of those processes and make things more efficient. And they wanted to make sure we had good content going out to their candidates. They were a really huge part of it. They had some really great feedback, and that was first and foremost, you know, the best place to start. And they had a really big hand in what we rolled out.
Yeah. And then Leanne, Heather mentions content, and I know we'll get into it in a little bit as one of our spoiler secrets, but how you took that start and how did you kind of run with that to build out something that was going to be really successful?
Yeah, well, definitely taking in everything the recruiters, said when we did the initial setup, and kind of just starting small. We started with our two main workflows. We really knew what we wanted to tackle and what we wanted to focus on in which phase of the candidate's life cycle. So we started with our two specific workflows, and from there selected very specific events and paid very close attention to all of the analytics and the response rates. Were they responding to email via or versus text? Did this event work better as a text message or as an email? And just really looking at the analytics and the data. Were they even opening the event? Did they read it? Did they not respond? And just trusting our analytics and adjusting from there.
That is a fantastic transition, because I just want to we can spend a moment just on analytics and this is kind of part of that first secret, is you can't manage what you don't measure. And to be tracking open rates and engagement and actually responses at scale, looking at the sentiment of those responses, those are all super critical to know, is this working? What's resonating with folks? Why are they responding well to one piece of content versus another? And, that's really, especially as you're beginning to test, I think that's a really great point for everybody who's listening. If you take something out of here today, it's starting small, starting with, okay, start with one or two, specific workflows, and let's build from there. What really works for our audience and our recruiters, and then listening to that feedback and kind of, crawl, walk, run. I think that's really, really important when it comes to automation, is like, let's automate everything. You're like, well, let's start, something that was manageable, and then let's feel comfortable, and then let's continue to grow. And analytics really help with the confidence to be able to do that, I think, for sure. And you mentioned this a little bit, so we're moving into secret number 2. Right time, right channel. Lian, you mentioned this, reaching across email versus text and optimizing for both of those channels. That's really, really key to know when is something going to go to our candidates at the right time, and does that need to be going? Is that an email? Is that email appropriate copy? Should it be something that's shared in a text? Back to that, expectation by your talent, they want to receive the right piece of content in the right medium that they expect it. Something that's short and simple should be sent over a text. Something that's a little longer, something's got lots of detail in it, probably better for an email. And I think when you guys are talking about optimizing content, can you guys give our audience an example of how you've really optimized for that?
Yeah, so first we started with several different types. So we didn't continually send one type. I think we found out pretty quickly, and that was trial and error, but we find that candidates respond to a number of different types of mediums. So you never know what candidate's going to want, what type of communication. So it's really best to give them a little bit of everything so that you can hit each type of candidate. But for an example, our first day survey got changed several times. So it got changed first just based on recruiter feedback telling us we were sending it the wrong time, that candidates weren't responding because of this, that, and the other thing. So, okay, got it. Mm-hmm. So we changed the times, and then we started looking at the analytics and realized that simply email on the first day was not the way to go. And so, for instance, we changed that one to text. And luckily, the system's super easy, and you can flip around mediums really quickly, so we were able to change it to text pretty simply. So, getting the right strategy out the gate may not happen, but we're really flexible, and that's important to remember, to be flexible with it when you're getting started. Doesn't mean it's wrong. You just might have to tweak a few things. So that was one of the first ones we did. Now, it didn't mean we changed all the surveys. We still have surveys in there at email. Our next survey is an email and actually works better as an email. So, you have to just try a few things, but that was based on the feedback. Again, first from the field, and then from what we saw in the analytics from the candidates themselves, and now we have great feedback from that first day survey.
Perfect. I think this leads us also into our next secret, which is right along the same thing, exactly what you're saying. It's not just the right time, right channel, it's the compelling content. And that is obviously something that is so key when you talk about things recruiters were worried about from the beginning. Was like, I just want to make sure the things that you're sending my talent are high quality, it's a great message, it's something that they're going to want to see, it's warm, it's friendly, whatever it needs to be. That is, there's also another thing I think for the audience here to really take away. It's just, you know, so if you're going to spend extra time somewhere, I say definitely spend your extra time on creating compelling content. And Lian, I know you've done an amazing job of building a content mix that's valuable, interesting, entertaining at times. And can you just tell us how you think through it? How did you really work on building compelling content, you know, for all of your audiences that you reach out to?
Yeah, so when we started, we were obviously very excited. So we were like, candidates want to know everything that we're doing. They want to be in contact with us. They want to know all about HSS, and we were just, you know, giving it to them that way. So we learned pretty quickly that they really didn't care that much. So one of the events that we had in the beginning was like kind of like a follow-up, you know, little marketing email, just telling them where they could keep track of HSS, what type of social medias we were on, how they could contact us, how could they engage with us. And we learned very quickly through our analytics that they just didn't really care and weren't responding well. We had very low click rates, very low open rates. So, you know, Heather and I kind of got together and I was like, we got to make this more exciting or we just got to take it out. So we, you know, agreed to switch the approach and made it more of a growth article kind of email. And we added some fun articles that really focused on the candidate and their experience, whether it be personally, professionally, just giving them either guides or fun little lighthearted articles to just keep them engaged, but where it was really more for them and about them, because they really didn't care about what we were doing.
Didn't care about us.
No. So, you know, if you really are having a hard time trying to find some good content, I would just, you know, start with food.
They love food.
They love food articles. To this day, it's really, anytime we involve anything dealing with food, it's our highest click ratio. So, you know, just know your audience. You know, we realized after a few months of testing, okay, they don't like this, and then we implemented something else. We really paid attention to those response rates, open rates, and all the analytics that are provided in the portal. And we knew what they wanted, so that's what we gave them.
Right. And they're not, and let me just say, they're not just reading this content, they're responding to it. And that's why we'll send them anything they want. We get it all the time. We see these responses, oh, thank you, so-and-so for saying this was a great read. I can't believe, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so as long as they're responding to it and it's something that they want to interact with, like, you know, we're happy to provide the content to them. But they definitely want stuff that helps them with their career, or, you know, foods that make them smarter, or anything like that.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, and you've told me this before, which is that content in general, sending them valuable content, and for everyone listening, be like, it's not just sending like recipes to people, it's things that are value added. Right. It's value added to help people in their careers, or information helping them in an interview, whatever it happens to be. And it opens a line of communication. So you're getting these responses, and Heather, I know you've told me this, is that you're getting responses on things where someone asks a follow-up question. You've sent something out that's valuable, and they're asking a question about something in their own experience or their own kind of process that you wouldn't have known about if you hadn't sent something out. And I think that's a really great way for folks to kind of think about, you know, sending out valuable content, and, you know, in not even just like the operational kind of, hey, you have an interview coming up tomorrow. One, that is compelling content, and that it is operational and very personal, and helps people, you know, make sure they're staying on top of, you know, what their own process. But that next level of content, which is like, hey, I'm gonna send you interesting articles that I know are gonna be important to you for your career, for your growth and development, that stuff, I think a lot of folks could really benefit to think, how can we play that into our strategy, and not overthinking it, it's keeping it simple.
I mean, essentially, you know, they come to us for a service, right? And we just want to make their experience as enriching as possible. And if showing them, you know, how do you approach a manager first week on the job, then that's what we're going to give them.
Yeah, I think, yeah, again, it's understanding exactly, being able to time that to say, hey, you're starting a job soon. let's send you this article about how should you interact with your manager the first week on the job. That's all amazing stuff that builds that relationship with your talent on a deeper level, where you're having, you can take care of that without having to ask your recruiters to spend all of this time. You're able to deliver that kind of through an automated way. And as we're talking about recruiters, talking about responding, there's something here, and I think this is so key to anybody who's thinking about automation, which is that you really can't forget the human touch. Automation and people really make this work together. You know, just sending blasts of tons and tons of articles or news to just tons of people and then not having responses go to somebody to be able to handle those, that's almost a worse experience than sending nothing at all, in my opinion, I think, and I think you guys might agree with that too, is, you know, all messages, and I know, Heather, you mentioned this earlier, all messages come from a real person. It's coming from a name that they know. It's coming from their recruiter. And when they respond, those responses are going to that recruiter's inbox. And I know you guys set up an inbox to help kind of make sure nothing falls through the cracks. Can you guys talk about that process of handling, you know, making sure you bring a human touch to the way that you automate?
Yeah, so obviously we're sending out a lot of messaging, so we kind of wanted to make sure that, you know, the recruiters are getting back any response that's tied to them. And I also wanted to have an additional pair of eyes just in case, you know, ever a recruiter is out or, you know, ownership changes, you know, things happen. And we just want to make sure that someone is always going to be able to see the response so that the candidate, if a feedback or response is needed back to them instantly, it could be provided.
Right. Well, and I like that you've also brought this up in terms of, you know, getting, this is kind of going back to the recruiters, getting them on board, is trusting the tool. That is a huge thing. I both highlight that. Is not just, you know, you two trusting, but your recruiters needing to trust the automation. And that's another piece, I think, that makes, you know, technology and people work together. Can you guys talk a little bit about that and how you need to kind of really put some confidence in the technology you have?
Oh, yeah. So trusting the tool is super important. So for us, you know, anytime that I'm introducing either a new recruiter or just reviewing this sense with any of our in-house recruiters, I always talk about the Sense tab. You know, anything that your candidates are going to be getting is visible to you as well. So you can see when they're getting it, how they're interacting with the content or the messaging, if they're responding, and if they're opening or not responding, you know, so that way then you know how to fit that into your workflow and how you're going to approach it. So knowing that they have it visible and they can see when something's going to be deployed or when something's scheduled is really helpful to them to kind of work into their workflow.
I think we also take the time to really train all the recruiters. I just want to say we take time to really go through all the content with the recruiters, any changes to the content, because it's obviously very important if we send something out and they respond to it, that the recruiter knows why they're responding to it or what it is they just received, because usually the response is, oh, I just love what you just sent me. That's all they say, right? So it's important the recruiter knows what it is they just sent out since it came to them, really helps with the conversation. So we really make sure the recruiters know everything that's happening and going out to all their candidates and that they're trained properly on it. That way it remains, you know, that it has that human touch.
Right, and I think that's huge too, to make sure that your technology gives your recruiters the visibility to see into what's being sent out and when, so that they can trust, hey, I know that's going out today, tomorrow, this week, and they don't have to worry too much about it. I'm going to keep us moving right along, and this kind of gets in that same, you guys have talked about surveys, we've talked a lot about feedback, and that's been such a huge piece of, you know, you can automate feedback. You can ask people for their opinion in an automated way, and everyone loves having their opinion heard. Let me tell you that. If you're thinking like, what should I ask people? You're like, yes, you absolutely should. People will share what their experience looks like. And I think, you know, can you talk to us just a little bit, Shirley, I'm going to try and keep us on time, on how you've incorporated, you know, asking for feedback throughout, you know, the entire talent life cycle, what that's done for healthcare support in your guys' team?
I mean, it's been amazing. It's helped us with a ton of things, right? We talked about attrition. It helped us just better understand both our candidates, wherever they're at in that life cycle. It's helped us, change a lot of our processes internally, because we've seen where we've had some mistakes happen. Where I think we didn't expect it would be in clients. So our clients love that we're getting feedback. Clients are now, requesting their own workflows. So we've done some customization for specific clients, and so we've been able to use it actually as a sales tool to say that we now have, some industry-leading tech, to help keep their candidates, happier and on the job longer.
Yes. And I like that you guys have used this almost in like not a competitive way, but yeah, it's like a competitive advantage to say, like, hey, we ask our talent and we ask our contractors or candidates, everybody, for feedback throughout their entire process, and we'll share that with you. And that's what helps differentiate us. So I think that's something for everybody listening, thinking about how that could help not just your talent to make things better for them, but how that could help your business, and to say, we do this for our talent because we care, and they are at the center of our operation. And that's something, if you do business with us, we're going to care for the folks that work with you too, just as much. And I think that's really, really key. All right, and this is bonus secret. I'm going to tell all of you. So we actually have 6 secrets, and I think this one is it's so table stakes, it's almost even not a secret, which is just you want to partner with technology. You want to pick a partner and not just a vendor. Automation is so great for your business, but to be able to do it right for you, you need to partner with somebody who you can trust and can help you along the way. And I know, Heather, your experience, in evaluating technology, can you just tell everybody how important this was to you and to HSS?
Sure. I mean, anything that you're going to add to your tech stack is obviously extremely important. And as you mentioned, they have to be a partner, right? So they have to work with you throughout the whole process. The better they know the systems, for instance, the ATS that you're integrating into, obviously the better. I mean, one of the things that stands out for me, and any vendors I'm going with, but certainly our partnership with Sense, was the really robust integration that you have with our ATS. Your ability to grab all the custom fields that we have. We have an extremely customized ATS system. We've customized absolutely everything possible within that thing. So your ability to grab all of our intricate customizations so that we can work them into those workflows, so that we can, get those as personalized and customized as possible, was, is really big. Response time is huge. Sometimes with, some new vendors, that can be an issue. So the ability to be able to get in touch with somebody when you're having an issue or you're trying to build a workflow, because being, stopping and having to wait for a response can, would be really annoying. So the ability to get a really quick response and help, kind of right there on the spot is really helpful. And, we said how we got started and everything, but honestly, Sense did a great job of kind of getting us going. They gave us some really good suggestions and ways to get started, and some really good feedback along the way, and things to try, and they continue to do that. Even though we've got like 8 to 10 workflows, they're always like, hey, let's try this. So that's all really important, because even if you have an idea, you're always going to get held up somewhere. So somebody that's really the subject matter expert on both sides of the integration is really key, and it can help you really quickly.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I definitely think, I'm sure a lot of folks sitting here be like, yeah, our ATS is pretty challenging too, and that is super, super important, to make sure that you're working with somebody who spends the time to understand your data, make sure things sync up and work, so it's all really, really seamless. So now let's kind of move into this last section before we get into Q&A. I know there have been a lot of questions on like, what workflows are you guys using? What do they look like? I just want to like peel back all of the secrets there. If you're thinking about, I'm actually going to move this out of the way a little bit. Engagement throughout the entire talent lifecycle. It's not an exhaustive list, what's on your screen right now, but it is actual workflows that you can think about implementing for every stage of that talent lifecycle. When you're attracting candidates, pre-deployment, when they're actually on assignment, redeployment, and post-placement. And then you'll see along the bottom here are some examples of things that you can do at any point. You know, the NPS surveys and pulse checks, anytime, that's great. Status notifications to clients when candidates are moving through the process. Contact information, confirmation, or updates, also great at any time. So, and I know this question is one that it's come from our Q&A, and I just want to ask Heather, Leanne, can you talk us through what actual workflows you have running, what ones you started with, and then you know, and you said you have 8 or 9. I'm gonna have to go into every single, you know, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I know you have a lot. Maybe let's talk through which, like, 1 or 2 you started with, and then maybe like 2 or 3 that you evolved into that you're really excited about.
Yeah, I mean, we started with pre-deployment and on assignment because we were working on attrition. That was our main thing, and that's where that's where we decided we were losing candidates the most.
Right.
So we wanted to touch people before they started and while they were on assignment. So that's where we started, and then we branched off from there and have all kinds of things going off that point. But those were our main 2, and we really fine-tuned those for quite a while. Until we felt like they were really good. And we still update them and make updates, but we spend quite a bit of time on those 2 workflows. Those also tend to be the 2 areas where, not that recruiters aren't contacting them, but they get a little sidetracked, and there's a lot of contact that needs to be made. But again, if you just miss it a little bit, you can so easily like lose people through that process. There's also a lot of different things going on. So like you have onboarding happening, so you've got like onboarding surveys, like how is everything going? So we were trying to find out, you know, where they were at in the process, how the candidates were doing, and we found out so much stuff from candidates within that process. And then obviously while they're on assignment, again, not that recruiters aren't paying attention, but right, like once they start, like recruiters kind of move on a little bit. So it's sometimes hard to remember all those that are working. So we really wanted to make sure like those candidates, you know, felt the love still and were still engaged and still knew we were around and we're still engaging with them and sending them stuff. So those were our 2 main, and it still remain probably our most robust workflows.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we've done has spun off from that. And everything else has been much smaller in scale.
Yeah.
Okay. Leanne, I don't know if you want to share, especially within those specific workflows, any of the, and you don't have to reveal all your secrets, you can keep the Leanne content close to your heart, but any specific content or touch points that you send throughout those workflows that are really, you know, exceptional, or things that folks who are listening could be like, oh yeah, if I'm doing a pre-deployment, pre-hire workflow or an on assignment, I want to make sure I have this particular touch point. That might be something that I think folks would love to hear.
Yeah, so I'd definitely, if you're going to do pre-deployment and you do onboarding in-house, definitely you need an onboarding check. That's probably the point in the process when they're getting started where the candidate's the most frustrated. They're having to collect all this information, gather all their documents. You know, half of them have lost their diplomas. So, you know, you definitely want to check in on them and make sure that they're still good, excited for their start date that's coming up, and aren't extremely frustrated with anything. So I would recommend that one. And then for during on assignment, in my opinion, our most valuable one is the first week survey. So it's a survey that goes out at the end of their first week. And that's where they really highlight everything that they've done. They've completed their first week. They can actually give you genuine feedback on how they feel about this assignment at whatever, you know, client, location, etc. You can dig deeper if you'd like, but candidates have been, in my opinion, and from what we've seen, the most honest with their feedback in that first week survey. And then we take that and we disperse that feedback to the recruiter, the account manager, the client, etc. So
that's great. That
and,
is.
And just for everybody that's on, it's not that recruiters weren't already doing these types of check-ins. They were, so we've taken these a little bit off their plates, but more than anything, this helps them prioritize. So if they have a first week check-in come in, for instance, that's low, that person needs to be called right now.
Yeah.
Whereas someone's rating it a 10, they're good. They may not need your call today, right? They may be able to wait a little bit before you check in specifically, or they can just go back and forth like on text message for a little while, you can say, so happy you had a great day. So it just helps the recruiters manage, you know, lots of candidates out in the field. So again, it's not that these recruiters aren't contacting these candidates. There's still lots of recruiter contact happening. I would say actually more recruiter contact than was probably happening before because of all the responses going back and forth with the candidates.
Yeah.
This just helps ensure that everybody's getting this contact, regardless of what recruiter they have or if the recruiter is even in the office today.
Right. Well, actually, you bring up a good point, and this is just a quick sidebar. Is you talk about texting back and forth. I mean, you guys use, and your recruiters use send messaging, which is the two-way texting tool to be able to handle some of those responses back and forth. And that's a really great way to make it easier for the recruiter to, you know, if they don't have time for a phone call, okay, you know this response has come in, let's take this over to text, let's try and if you can figure out some simpler stuff, you know, have a conversation back and forth, they can do that right from their desk. And that's kind of that beauty of having automation and, you know, two-way texting in one platform, is to be able to have all of that happen in one place without having the recruiter need to hop between systems. It's all recorded, it's all written back. That's a huge value add for any recruiter who's trying to manage so many candidates, so much talent, you know, in their pipeline. And you actually mentioned something, Heather, that when you talk about the experience of knowing who to prioritize first, and this kind of gets us into this last piece of this webinar, which is this ROI. We should be measuring more. We talked a lot about using open rates and click-through rates to measure what's kind of working, you know, what content works on what channels, but automation can go so much deeper than that. And when you talk about, okay, I know, you know, someone has come in off of a survey and they've had a poor experience at the end of their week. Okay, I need to improve that experience right away and make sure I figure out what's going on, get on the phone. And I think, Heather, for everybody also looking at this slide, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are metrics in your own business that you should be looking to move the needle with automation. You know, you're sourcing more candidates, or you're reducing drop-off rates or no-show rates. And Heather, I know that you guys caught a trend, you know, if folks aren't responding or engaging, you know that they weren't going to show up in that first, to their first day. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we noticed that if they don't respond to our pre-deployment workflow, so the first, I think it's like 3 that go out, we know there's a very high likelihood that they're not starting. And what was really nice about figuring that out is, without looking at that, recruiters may generally wait to pull that candidate until like the day of, or the day before, which, you know, is not what you want to tell a client, right? That somebody's not starting. And so we've been able to see trends like that a whole lot further, in hopes that we can either re-engage that candidate, or at worst, pull that candidate ourselves and get another candidate in there prior to that start date. So we saw that trend, you know, I'd say about 6 months in, it was pretty obvious that if they weren't responding to those first 3 workflow items, that it was like 70% chance they weren't starting.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a huge indicator that helps save you guys time, save your recruiters time, reduce those no-show rates. And I already mentioned this earlier in the webinar, but, you know, folks you engage with are 4 times more likely to return, you know, if they've been engaged throughout the entire process. Again, that's a great metric. That's not just open rates and click-through rates, but it's actual ROI to say, hey, we're keeping talent engaged. Talent is coming back to work with us because we're engaging with them throughout the entire talent lifecycle. And that's something that is really, really key. You want to make sure you're using, you know, technology that helps move the needle here. And that's where that, you know, when we're talking about those 2 layers of automation, it's more than just basic data maintenance and cleanup. It is strategic, it's personalized, it's actually moving the needle for your talent, for your clients, for your recruiters, you know, at every point. Wow, I got on my little, step down from my soapbox for a second. And I know we've only got about 9 minutes left. I want us to get to Q&A. We've got a lot of great questions, but just top 5 key takeaways, just, you know, read through these really quick. You know, engage your recruiting team for input when building automation. That is so key. You know, test your content and your strategy. Watch those open rates and response rates to figure out what channels work, what content works, but then measure that ROI to make sure it's really working, you know, drop-off rates, satisfaction, everything, to know if you're really moving the needle. Have confidence in your automation, make sure your recruiters can see what's going out when and help them fight the urge to follow up or send something out the same day. Just trust your technology. Being human is huge. Using technology that you can do automated messages and hand over to, bi-directional, either through text message or email, and keep that connection really personal. And then last but not least, just always ask for feedback and use it. I mean, Heather, Lian, you guys have done such a fantastic job of changing your process based on the feedback you've heard. And that's a huge point, that's a huge value add for your business and for your clients as well. So those are our top 5 key takeaways from what we just chatted about. If you're looking for more about automation or just learning more about Sense, we are going to send everybody a copy of our Sense Journeys ebook. Journeys is our automation, engine. So it's empowering, recruiting, marketing, talent acquisition, operations teams to create those personalized experiences and then automate across the entire journey. So we will follow up with more information after that. And as I've just sped into Q&A, let's get into it really fast. So let's start with this one. Somebody did ask, will my candidates know this is automated? I like to make sure everything is personalized and a white glove touch. They will not know at all. Heather, Lian, I know you guys mentioned this a little bit, but they won't know it's automated at all.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how you send it, but like we make everything come from the recruiter. Like that's what it says. It's coming from the recruiter. Recruiter's not doing anything. And so they believe it is in fact coming from the recruiter. And we know that because when they respond, they say, "Hi, Jeff, thank you for sending me this." And other responses that are very clear that they do in fact believe it.
Yeah, and just like when you're setting up your content, just make sure you're using those smart fields so it can sync over all that information to make it extremely personalized.
Right. And by smart fields, she means like a tool like Sense uses variables that integrate.
Variables, yes.
Variables, when it integrates with your ATS, it's pulling information from all those fields. So it's pulling in the recruiter's name, the first name, everything. So it's all hyper-personalized. Question from Heidi. What specific journeys have helped with attrition? I think you kind of covered this already, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more, Heather, on anything else, I'm sure they would love more detail as well. But I know we kind of covered which ones, the pre-deployment.
And on assignment, I mean, both of them are extremely important. You can't really do it with just one of those. Pre-deployment specifically helps get them to start on the job. So depending on which attrition I guess you're looking at, and then the on assignment is helpful to keep them on assignment.
Right. Fantastic. We got a question. What additional roles are needed in an organization to support staffing automation? I will give my kind of take on that, and then Heather, Lian, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts too. I think when you've got the right tool, you can do it with your existing team. I think you need an initial investment in terms of time and strategy, making sure that you've got folks who are really bought in to help you build out, setting yourself up for success, like Secret One. Plus a really strong customer success team. I know Heather talked about that, working with Sense, having a partner to help you, give you recommendations, make sure your data is working, make sure that everything is operating, at 100%. That pays off in dividends. That really does kind of supplement, especially if you have a small team. So that's definitely something that's my take. Heather, Lian, any other thoughts on, additional roles if you needed them?
I mean, we're a team of 2. And we set it up. We did not hire anyone additional. So I mean, we didn't need anybody. We didn't need anybody else to do it. Sense helped us where we needed help. That's my take on it.
Good take. Here's a great question. And this is Heather, Lian, this is for you too. So did any of your team give resistance to having to implement this in an already full calendar? Was there any pushback or any kind of like bumps or things that you had to kind of mitigate along the way?
I mean, I think with any new tool, there's always a little bit of pushback, depending on, where you're at in the company. I will say our leadership team was really excited for it, and they were all for anything that was going to help. I'd say the most pushback was probably from the field. anytime you tell a recruiter you're going to contact their candidate on their behalf, they don't immediately jump for joy. So, you know, that takes some explaining, and we had to, you know, talk them through that. So that was, I think, where maybe the biggest pushback was, if any. But once we explained that we were going to, you know, help them and all the time it was going to give them back and what it was going to do for them, you know, and because we were getting their feedback on it and making it what they wanted, it made that process, you know, a whole lot easier. And then once they were getting the responses and they really enjoyed it, especially when we added in referrals, and then they started getting referrals from your candidates and they really liked it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to make it about them and how they're going to, you know, what they're going to get out of it too. But I would say, you know, I know new tools are sometimes hard to get through leadership, and I, you know, be happy to talk offline on that one. But, you know, we have a great leadership team here, and they were really, really supportive from day one. So I can say I'm really lucky I didn't get much pushback there.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, with any new tool, obviously adoption is always, you know, the scary part, but just being excited about it, as you're excited and you tell them, you know, Heather said all the great features, how it makes their life easier, it goes a long way, because then they start to get curious, and then they start to actually engage with the tool because of their curiosity. So definitely being excited helps.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, with any kind of change management, that's super key. One last question that we'll do before we all sign off is, one of the questions I had is about getting good ROI and engagement with data quality is an issue. Are there any automations available to help with data quality? Any suggestions? And I think data quality is very scary. That is, especially with automation, you want to make sure your data is in the best place possible. I think something that somebody advice given to a lot of our customers is, you know, 100% is almost never going to happen, but that's okay. You know, getting to, you know, 95% is amazing, you know, but there's basic automation, that kind of first tier that I was talking about, you know, that's in Sense, that you can reach out to folks, ask to confirm their email or their contact information, make sure their name is spelled correctly, what skills, you know, they have listed, that everything's up to date. You can automate that too, and that's kind of how you can at scale manage that data quality. So there is sort of a like basic contact update, or asking if they're interested in looking for a job, that updates that candidate status. That's all stuff that, you know, you can begin at your foundational level, working on workflows to make sure everything's up to date, and then build from there. And that's when I totally hear you, that data quality is absolutely something that's a little scary, but you know, the basic automation tools within Sense, like thinking back to your ATS and writing that information in when someone responds with what their, you know, right email is, or if they're interested in looking for jobs, that's the thing that'll help make sure the rest of your, you know, your data is clean, up to date, and that the rest of your workflows are all set up for success. I have the long-winded answer for that, but we are now at time. I want to thank we didn't answer your question. I'm so sorry. There's still a few that are out there. We will follow up and answer your email. We will send you an email with our answer. I'll make sure if there's anything specific for Heather and Leanne, I'll put you guys in touch. I know there were lots of folks asking for some advice. So Heather, Leanne, you guys are already, you know, mini celebs in this. You're going to get lots of hits, I'm sure, on LinkedIn. But I just want to thank everybody for tuning in today. This was a fantastic conversation. Heather, Leanne, thank you guys so much for all of your incredible insight, so much tangible information for everybody listening. And, you know, let's do this again soon. This is great. Let's do this every month. I could do webinars with you guys all the time. This is awesome. All right. So with that, thank you everyone for attending, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and happy automating. Reach out anytime if you have questions, and we'll talk soon. All right. Have a great day, everyone.